Start with our second presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jones Lundgaard, founder and CEO of Brandworkz. I think we're the odd one out in today's lineup of companies because ultimately most of the other companies are about the marketing execution and performance, and we're really at the other end upstream in the definition and communication, what your brand stands for on a fundamental level. Our argument, of course, is that unless you can stand out in the marketplace, whatever marketing you're doing is going to be less effective. So, of course, you still need to focus heavily on your performance, and especially in the digital world, that's something you can actually do, as opposed to an offline, it's very hard. Unless you are very clear about what your differentiators is and you can communicate that to your customers, it's not going to be as effective as if you can do that. And you need to do that both in terms of your positioning against your competitors and visually to stand out. So what I really care about is unlocking the full potential of people's brands. I'll tell you why. I worked for several years in creative agencies, and what I found was that whenever a brand was done, i.e. great positioning, effective visuals, etc., the implementation of that really was a nightmare, and it was very chaotic to get it out into the marketplace. Sometimes all the hard work would essentially fail to have the desired effect because of two key things: lack of online tools to implement the changes, and no central resource for everybody, both internally and externally, to understand the importance of the branding. Personally, I absolutely hate seeing good work go to waste, so I created Brandworkz to solve this problem. I'd like to welcome onto the stage Brant Long, Global Brand Director for Jones Lang LaSalle. Thank you very much. You too.
Great. So thanks, Jens. Thanks, everyone, for coming along. Just a quick show of hands, or you just sort of nod. How many people have used the term brand police in your career? And how many people have actually been called the brand police? And sometimes not in a nice way. So I'm going to spend a few minutes trying to reform the image of the brand police. I think in a lot of organizations, just quickly, my background, a bit like Jens, I've worked on the agency side and on the brand side. So I'm sort of a poacher turned gamekeeper now, so I understand the different tricks of how to push the corporate identity and brand, but also how the practicalities of getting things done in the organization are required. And so getting that balance between commercial and creative is a daily battle that we fight. So if I think about brand police, I think in some people's minds it's lovely Chief Wiggum. But if you think about what police are, they're local community members who kind of have an ear on the street and they know what's going on in the neighborhood. Now, you may not approve of their methods, of the way they do things. Sort of there's the old-fashioned way and the new-fashioned way. Or if you're in a big organization, you may think that actually they're a little bit too intrusive into what's going on. And they've got their ear to the ground, and they're not letting us really do anything like leave the country. And then you might work in a organization, and you may tell from my Cockney accent that I'm not a native of London, but I actually have been here for 12 years, that some brands tend to take kind of a unilateral approach to controlling messages and creative. And ironically, some of the most successful and powerful brands in the world, like Apple, are very good at this, and they actually don't let people locally do a lot of stuff and do a lot of creativity. So I think in the terms of brand police, we have kind of a bad reputation, but I'm going to show you that actually should be a good reputation. And the reason is, if you think about what police are meant to do, is to protect and to serve. And if you think about the original conception of private police forces, I believe it was invented by Sir Robert Peel in the UK in the 19th century. It was to protect the rich people from the poor people. So the rich people had things, property, assets, beautiful daughters that the poor people wanted. And so the police force was created to keep the poor people from getting it. So we as brand owners are the ones who own the asset. We have the asset. We want to protect it, but we also want to serve it. So we have to rethink what the role of the police are in this world. So if I'm a brand policeman, I'd like to be one of these guys instead of Chief Wiggum. So I show my team this picture and say, I'm your friendly policeman, and I've got a really cool motorcycle and a nice uniform and drive around the streets of California. So let's work together to make a better world. That's, kind of all kidding aside, but I work for a company that is a service business. It's a global property company, very much a consulting business, a people business. We don't have shops. We don't have brands. We don't have chemical components that go into boxes, and we ship thousands of them around the world. It's about people, relationship, track record, and heritage that we sell on. About 12 years ago, we merged with a company to create the current brand, the current organization that we have today. And since I joined the company just about 4 years ago, we've grown in size by more than a third. So we went from about 30,000 people to over 40,000 people. We've gone from $300 million in revenue when we merged in '99 to $3.6 billion in revenue. So grown really big, 30 acquisitions, and strangely enough, we've got a corporate brand that holds all of this together. But we probably didn't realize it. So what I'm trying to tell my team is, hey, we've won the lottery. We've got a corporate brand. We have a reputation that we need to protect. And this is really important. And it's almost like, the famous thing, Robbie Williams, when he cut his deal with EMI, I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams. So I'm trying to convince my organization that our brand is our reputation. It's our permission to do business. It's how we expand into the world. And it's something we need to protect and invest in and take seriously. Now, the challenge with that is, and as the title that Jens spoke of, is going from local to global. If any of you have worked in real estate, or if you've ever bought a house even, you know that real estate is a local business. It starts on a specific street in a specific neighborhood. People who've been in that neighborhood for a long time know the street. They know who's buying, who's selling, and what things are worth. What we've seen in the business over the last 10 years is, like in many businesses, is consolidation, the effects of globalization, capital flowing more freely in and out of countries than it ever was before. So we're really well positioned to take advantage of that because we're the second largest firm in the world that does this, and we're one of the consolidators. So we're trying to find more of the commonalities between these local markets than the differences, because typically in a big multinational organization, you fly into a country from headquarters and they say, yeah, but we don't do it that way here. And you go, okay, well, this is the way we do it at headquarters, and then you're at a standoff. Instead, you need to ask the question, okay, well, who is we, and how do we do things here? Because it's probably the same as the we over there and the we over there, and we have more in common than we think. So my challenge is at the center to try to find those good things, put them together, and then push them back out. So I like to think of these things as assets, creative assets, ideas, artwork, and putting them digital and putting them somewhere where we can get to them. So just quickly about us. We're a long-standing brand founded in London in 1783 by this lovely gentleman, Richard Winstanley, who was an auctioneer. Throughout the history, 100 years later, you can barely see our to let sign here, Jones Lang LaSalle. It was actually Jones Lang Wooten at the time. Moving into the post-war period, this was 1954 at Moorgate in Barbican, we were very influential in basically rebuilding London after the Blitz, because we had a lot of the records of who owned what and where and how big it was, and trying to put the city back together after it had been broken into a lot of small pieces of rubble was a real challenge. So the modern Jones Lang LaSalle was built very much in London off the back of this success. We're doing it today. We did it in Berlin, rebuilt Berlin after the fall of the wall, and we're doing it in the Olympics with the government and the Olympics Legacy Authority for the planning, the valuation of building a legacy in the east of London. So we're transforming skylines across the world, even though some of them stay the same throughout history. This was taken in the 1930s. I think only one of these buildings is still standing the same way, but it was ever thus. Someone's always renting, buying, selling, leasing buildings, and they still are today. So this was taken about 2 months ago. same street. Took a while to find the same view, but my photographer did. So throughout the years, the 1890s, and a series of very interesting facial hair founders and names over the door, Mr. Wooten and his son and Mr. Lang, through to the 1980s, again, some very interesting hairstyles, and I love the shoulder pads. That's one of my favorite. And the guys, too, the floppy fringes is a telltale sign, and those of you who are British will know what that is. To today, so this is a very modern team. This is our retail team. And this is, where all smiles, all people, all good relationships. So, as I said, about 40,000 people around the world, leading market share in Asia and across Europe now as well, in a lot of markets. Still a very local business, but with a lot of common things, investments in technology, and the brand that hold the network together. So as I said before, we are a people business, but we don't have shops and we don't have stores, and the people are very visible. We do have this visibility, which you might have seen. Our brand is trying to break out from the clutter, not so much the digital clutter, but the real world, three-dimensional ambient clutter of the estate agency business, the commercial property business. And you can see on this building over here, I love this. You know, this must be a really troubled asset if it takes 7 agents to try to flog it. It must be in real trouble. And then this one in Asia, you can see just, imagine the crowded noise there to try to break through. So as a brand director, you've got everything from signs on a building to patches on the boiler suit for the people who actually mop the floors in a commercial property, to how does an investment banker go into a meeting with the Qatari sovereign wealth fund and negotiate a deal for them to invest 300 million euros in France. So a range of applications of the brand that have to be managed. And one of the things we do, moving beyond just buying and selling, is placemaking. And this is an example of some of the work that our team in Moscow has done to create brands, to create identities for developers who want to launch a shopping mall or a residential development. So it's about creating brands, creating spaces and places that people will invest in and want to live in. And again, these are just some of the logos that my team has developed there in Russia. So a lot of assets, a lot of different things that move beyond kind of just simple buying and selling. So a very traditional business, very much based on heritage, that is now modernizing, joining the digital world. It's probably a little behind some of the companies you work for, but still facing a lot of the same challenges, some of the things that Jason talked about as well, and I'll come on to those. So we're a people business. We're also a content business. We create advertising, mostly in the trade press. You probably wouldn't have seen this. We have integrated campaigns. We actually have advertised in the FT. We like to do customer testimonials, again, which is a classic piece of advertising for B2B and services. But a more interesting part of our content business is our research side. We publish about 1,200 research reports a year. Some of them are global, a lot of them are local, very much quarterly reports, what's happening on the high street in Croydon, for example, because it's a very data-driven business. But I think something that Jason talked about in the digital world, and even in my world, is the thousands of pieces of collateral, or the thousands of hands that actually touch your brand locally. You can't control, and you don't always know what they're going to be doing with it until you see the print, or you see it online, or someone emails it to you and says, "Have you seen this? Oh my God, the team in Poland has made a video that you're not going to believe." So we get some surprises like that. So we have to create tools, we have to create simple, easy ways for people to be stewards of the brand locally. More and more our brand is living out in I mentioned ambient media, but very much we're a bit old-fashioned that we go to expos, we go to exhibitions. Last week was the MIPIM at Cannes, which is our big annual thing. A lot of people argue it's just a big champagne piss-up. You go on a yacht and you meet people. Other people say it's critical. We meet our clients there and all the deals are done. So it's kind of 50-50. It's a bit of sunshine, a bit of champagne, clients for dinner, but they expect you to be there. So we have to have the research there. We have to have all our T's crossed and our I's dotted, our reports there. We have to have something to say, but we also have to be there and be personable and be able to sell. So our information is struggling to get out from the spreadsheet to the presentation. So we have researchers now who are trained to give presentations, trained to present information as